The event is being recorded, and the recording will be available on our online platforms very, very soon. Today's event is organized in conjunction with our current exhibition, Kumihimo, Japanese Silk Braiding by Domyo. Shortly, I will hand over to our speaker for today, who will explore metaphors of binding and braiding in Shinkai's extraordinary work. But first, let me briefly introduce our guest speaker. Dr. Rayna Denison is professor of film and digital arts at University of Bristol, where she is also head of Department of Film and Television. After reading Japanese studies at the University of Oxford, Rayna received master and doctoral degrees in film studies from University of Nottingham. Her scholarly work includes the books Anime, A Critical Introduction, and the forthcoming Studio Ghibli, an Industrial History. She has also edited the academic collection Princess Mononoke, Understanding Studio Ghibli's Monsters Princess, and edited special issues of academic journals, including Journal for Japanese and Korean Cinema, Japan Forum, and written numerous articles on anime that can be found in Cinema Journal, Animation, and Interdisciplinary Journal, among others. In addition, Dr. Denison recently wrote a contextualizing history for the brochure of the Royal Shakespeare's Company adaptation of My Neighbor Totoro at the Barbican, which maybe some of you might have.
Not just relating to romance, but to wider familial and fated connections. As Hitoha remarks, such red threads of destiny or unmei converge and take shape. They twist, tangle, sometimes unravel, break, then connect again. This is the central philosophical thread that runs through Shinkai Makoto's 2016 film Kimi no Nawa, known, of course, in English as Your Name, that people can be connected across time and space by an ultimately unbreakable thread of destiny. When Kimi no Nawa broke local and international box office records for Japanese cinema, surpassing the likes of Miyazaki Hayao's Spirited Away, the film's story of cross-gender body swap and body swap motif were subject to extensive analysis by academics and journalists alike. In the film, Miyamizu's granddaughter Mitsuha wishes to be transported away from her life in the lakeside village of Itomori and wakes to find herself in the body of a Tokyo-based boy named Tachibana Taki. The two swap back and forth in the first act of Your Name, producing the kind of body swap comedy made famous by Hollywood films like Freaky Friday in the 1970s. However, as Mitsuha and Taki's continual swapping of bodies and points of view draw them closer to one another, new mysteries are revealed and a deeper story emerges. Kimi no Nawa is woven together out of this alchemical mix of traditional and contemporary reference points that belie the film's seemingly simple surface genre of body swap comedy. Kimi no Nawa is a highly literate film, effortlessly citing and reworking ideas just as its characters are depicted learning in classrooms, as we can see with Mitsuha here. The film's narrative reflects on Japanese history, revealing that Itomori was formed in the crater of a meteor strike some 1,200 years before Shinkai's film takes place. This itself is then recycled as the film's major threat as another meteor comes and imperils Itomori. Mirroring this, Shinkai has claimed a Heian period tale, the Torikaibaya Monogatari, as one of the film's key touchstones. This tale is about the lives of courtly siblings, one female and one male, who are happiest when embodying the other's gender. This is the origin point that Shinkai cites for his film's body swapping themes, some distance away from Hollywood genre comedies. As the tale explores how siblings find happiness through inverting gender roles, just as Mitsuha and Taki help to improve one another's lives. This is where a second major adaptive thread is woven into the fabric of Your Name by Shinkai. Shinkai's version of Kimi no Nawa incorporates elements of its radio play, film, and television drama namesakes. Beginning in 1952 as a radio drama, then quickly adapted into a trilogy of films between 1953 and 54, and then replayed as an asadora or morning drama on television, the previous iterations of Kimi no Nawa have tended to function on the surechigai. Hard to translate into English, but it kind of means ships that pass in the night. So focusing on missed opportunities for love between central characters, extending their longing for one another across multiple episodes and even multiple films in a series. We see this refracting Kai's atemporal use of storytelling in Kimi no Nawa and in Mitsuha and Taki's growing appreciation for one another, as well as in their romantic misadventures with other characters. As if that weren't enough, in addition, Kimi no Nawa also draws upon elements from more recent literary works, as Shinkai borrows the film's amnesiac moment from a short story by Murakami Haruki titled On Seeing the 100% Perfect Girl One Beautiful April Morning. Further even to these, Shinkai weaves elements of self-quotation into Kimi no Nawa, explaining in promotional videos for the film that the concept of having two geographically distanced protagonists was taken from an advertisement he made for educational company Zikai, which culminates in a romantic meet-cute for its Karen and hero as they receive their exam results bathed in Shinkai's very typical lens flare lighting effects, where the light bleeds out and forms these beautiful rainbows, as you can see here. As these examples, Shinkai is a director whose screenwriting draws together diverse and thoroughly dispersed narrative threads, knotting them together in the service of his temporalex storytelling, very much inspired by the kinds of braided connectivity found in Kumihimo arts and crafts in Japan. If Kimi no Nawa operates as a patchwork-style narrative, this can be seen right at the level of the film's dialogue and visuals, especially in how Shinkai treats gender. For example, Kimi no Nawa's use of language, both written and spoken, functions as a major gendered theme in the film. When body-swapping Mitsuha and Taki betray their real feminine and masculine traits and identities, misusing pronouns and language that boys and girls would never normally utter. Taki and Mitsuha's attempts to communicate with one another in between body swaps also reveal similar misconceptions. While using everything from phones to notebooks to writing on one another's hands and even on one another's faces, they reveal one another's identities and try to unravel the mystery of why they keep changing places. One of my favorite examples of this is pictured on the image at the bottom of this slide, where in this scene, Mitsuha and Taki write insults on one another's faces during a body swap. They both mean roughly the same thing, kind of like, you idiot. But Taki writes the more masculine and therefore rougher aho on Mitsuha's face, and she retorts by calling him baka. The serious point in these complicated comedic uses of written and spoken Japanese, forgive me, is that Mitsuha and Taki have to find means to communicate that transcend time and space in the film's atemporal narrative as it weaves patterns of connection around them. These linguistic puns, for those of you who speak Japanese, litter the script of Kimi no Nawa, but more than this, they inform the way Shinkai and his animators play games with their audience, making allusions to the film's core themes in the visuals of Kimi no Nawa as well. In this scene, for example, we can see Mitsuha's class discussing a classical Japanese poem from the Manyoshu, which identity is itself the central question. The film's visuals have been animated through, as you can see in these examples, digital technologies, which allow for the compositing of hand-drawn images with photography and also computer-generated imagery. The visuals in Kimi no Nawa, therefore, construct another layer of knotting, blending illusion and allegory within the film. Kumihimo, the braids that Hitoha and the Miyamizu granddaughters make, become a recurrent visual motif within these imagistic games. The one seen here in Mitsuha's hair is passed back and forth between Mitsuha and Taki throughout the film, coming to symbolize the red thread of destiny that connects them. And you can see that here in this image, where the loose threads at the end of the braided Kumihimo, literally transform into the thread of destiny that connects our two characters. These kinds of transformation or metamorphosis are another animation technique that Shinkai relies upon in Kimi no Nawa to ensure that the points and indeed the jokes of his film land. This is easiest to see in how the animation team worked to give Taki and Mitsuha visual and movement characteristics of the other when they swap bodies. We can see it, for example, in Taki's slight, enlarged pupils and irises, and in Mitsuha's more open stance, shall we say, in this image from the film. As you watch Kimi no Nawa today, I'll hope you take note of the subtleties in variances in character design that emerge as they swap bodies back and forth throughout the film, as their styles of movements and differences even in posture mark Taki and Mitsuha's transformations from one body to another. Interwoven into these subtle character metamorphosis and stylized animation are contrasting examples of animation style. Shinkai's backgrounds are clearest as the points of distinction, I think, formed out of realistic, playful experiments with Japanese anime norms and expectations. Shinkai relies on perfected versions of the real in his backgrounds, and especially in his representations of real Japanese places. Any one of you who's had the joy of going to Shinjuku in Tokyo will recognize the scene on this slide. On the left-hand side, you can see the JR Shinjuku station sign, and all of these buildings exist in the real world and as they are pictured around it, reproduced in painstaking animated detail, even down to the milling crowds and traffic going past at the bottom of the slide. This form of photorealism, a common technique in animation, is used to exaggerate the real as if captured by a camera lens, presenting the real back to us in an aestheticized, sometimes beautified version of itself. So Shinkai is famed for this kind of photorealism, but also for another kind of realism that is more subtle. Its uses of real-world videography and photography as the basis for the movement in his scenes. This is known in animation as rotoscoping. While the image just shown demonstrates how closely Shinkai's animators model their images on real-world places, the image on this slide is closer to the idea of rotoscoping. So rotoscoping is the practice of recording real-world performances of movement and then reproducing them directly in animation. Some of you will know, I'm sure, that the most famous example of this in animation history was the use of a ballet dancer as the model for Snow White's movement in Disney's 1930s film. In this image, Mitsuha's ritual dance has been closely modeled by a guiding performance from kabuki act Nakamura Kazutaro. And behind the scenes videos of the film's production show animators actually sitting around and watching this performance by Nakamura as they try to work out how to present and represent Mitsuha's dance sequence. Shinkai uses these aspects of animated realism to ground his fantasy and sci-fi storytelling in our world, generating a sense of real spaces that his fantastic and science fiction stories can inhabit. This is one key to understanding the local and transnational popularity of Kimi no Nawa as well, because its places have become sites of real-world fan pilgrimages, connecting audiences to the storytelling and world-building of Kimi no Nawa directly. The film's locations appear on many tourism websites, advertising overseas travel to and within Japan, including the National Arts Center in Roppongi, which Taki visits on his ill-fated date with a co-worker, as seen on this slide. The film's Rie Karatsu has tied Shinkai's depictions of real-world places to what she calls Shinkai's Kumihimo imagery, which she sees running through Kimi no Nawa. Now, she's very critical of Shinkai's film and argues that he uses this Kumihimo imagery to connect the town and the country in Kimi no Nawa, and she criticizes the impulse, arguing that Shinkai turns Taki into a city-based savior for Mitsuha's near-forgotten, tradition-laden countryside world. And this may help to explain why so much of the tourism around Kimi no Nawa relates to its Tokyo locations, rather than to those belonging to Mitsuha's countryside home in Itomori. For example, these steps, which go up to the Suga Shrine in Tokyo, near Yotsuya Station, are the same steps where our hero and heroine pass one another and have become the high point for many fan pilgrimages around Tokyo. It may not just be that Kimi no Nawa's Tokyo places are easier to visit, though. Itomori, Mitsuha's home in Gifu Prefecture, though based on real reference points, is an invention. It's a fantasy. Itomori is another linguistic pun from Shinkai, translating roughly to protective or protecting threads. It's the site of Kimi no Nawa's fantasy, the place where Taki can traverse time to meet with Mitsuha, the place where traditional magic to enter the otherwise meticulous representations of our mundane world. As such, despite Mitsuha's desire to escape the countryside of familial tradition, which she feels trapped, Itomori has a powerful, almost magnetic pull for these characters. It is in and around the scenes in Itomori that I believe some of Kimi no Nawa's most exciting animation has been created. It's true that it is Tokyo-based Taki who stands out as a savior in Itomori, working towards finding a way to cross time to save Mitsuha and her hometown from an upcoming meteor strike. But contrary to Karatsu's claims, it is equally Mitsuha's family traditions that afford Taki the means to make his magical journey. The film's animation comes from a high-profile roster of animators, including ex-Ghibli animators like Ando Masashi, who acted as the character designer. And so the fact that Itomori becomes a place of magic should come as no surprise. I would ask you to watch for the moments like this one showing on the screen right now, where Shinkai's talented animators weave non-realistic animation into his otherwise fundamentally realistic story. In the sequence, you can see on the screen the comet that threatens Itomori in dread of destiny to her. And in doing so, it's not the film's touristic realism that unites the central character saves the day. It's not Tokyo, but rather a return to the animistic Shintoism and tradition Koha first introduces. So as you watch Nawa, I hope that you'll note the moments not just aesthetic and play, but those in which Shinkai and his animators speak and break away from norms. As we just saw, these moments act like applique added on top of Kimi no Nawa's otherwise anime-inspired photorealistic norm. They break with anime traditions to incite us to imagine other ways of depicting the world. In doing so, these moments are in styles that speak to Japanese artistic history and to the film's grander themes. If Kimi no Nawa sits on a loom threaded by destiny, then the weave of Shinkai's film is comprised of a near photorealist aesthetic reflective of contemporary Japanese life, while the weft presents us with a contrasting focus on tradition and art, as well as fantasy. These unite together in a musubi knotting pattern, generating for us a tapestry that speaks to some of Shinkai's core filmmaking concerns, most notably the elasticity of time and the potential of the animated form. I hope you enjoyed the film this afternoon, and thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Rayna, for this fascinating talk and pointing our attention towards the multi-layered inspiration of literary, pop cultural, traditional layers in Shinkai's work. So thank you for being us today with us, and thank you to everyone who is in Japan House for this afternoon, and to those who are watching us at home. Um,